Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. So about 9 months ago, I purchased this Shire Heyo named Clyde at the South Hope Rescue Auction, and when I purchased him, I really didn't know much about him at all. I just thought he had a nice demeanor and would be easy to train. But after a while, I got curious about him, his past, all that fun stuff. So I did a little digging, contacted some of his old owners, and managed to piece together pretty much his life story. And today, I'd like to share it with all of you. So without further ado, here is Clyde's story. The first real home Clyde had was on a little farm all the way over in the French countryside. It was fairly small, but they already had quite a few animals that they used for ranch work, including one other horse, a Tennessee Walker named Carrots. Clyde was originally purchased as a yearling from an unknown seller as a Christmas present for the family's two kids, Teddy and Arabella Richard. Although the Richards had the best in mind, they weren't the best home by a long shot. All they had as a bridle was some ropes tied together, and the saddle pad they were using was thin and, frankly, coming apart. Also, being a yearling, Clyde had no training at all. He was fine with the kid sitting on his back while he was led around, but the moment Arabella took the reins, he was bucking and rearing and doing everything he could to get away from her. Along with this, the family was struggling with money, and the giant untrained yearling was costing them a lot and only putting their kids at risk of injury. The kids, however, being kids, were still quite attached to Clyde, so Mr. and Miss Richard put the thought aside and wound up selling a few of their other livestock. This lasted for about another year until Clyde was 3. One day, Arabella tacked up Clyde to ride him around the animal pen. She was a kid and had no idea what she was doing, so when she tried to ride him around, he reared up and she fell to the ground. The Richards no longer had a choice in this and sold Clyde off to the first person willing to pay. Clyde was sold to what, on the outside, actually probably did look like a nice professional riding facility. But calling it professional was about the worst way to describe it. It was run by a woman who, unfortunately, cared more about her paycheck than the welfare of her horses. There were about 20 horses there, I want to say, and Clyde was pretty much just beaten up by all of them. The horses were all very mean, very much not kid-proof, which they were only being used as lesson horses, so that was a great combo. Clyde was basically left tied to an arena fence all day, and whenever anyone offered the owner any sum of money to have their kid come ride a horse, she would grab the nearest one, set up some jumps, and just let the kid run around and do whatever. Clyde, again, was a pretty young horse with absolutely no training, because goodness knows he wasn't getting a professional training job on his little farm life. But she didn't care. She would just throw on whatever ill-fitting jumping tack she had and a bridle with a bit, although he had never been trained to use a bit at all, so that was just a great combination, along with the fact that every kid there was required to have spurs. But every single time he would rear and refuse and throw kids off, the owner would just claim that he was a lazy horse and that he needed to be forced over jumps. This lasted until Clyde was about 11, I want to say, and it just never got better. Because, of course, having your horse being forced over every single jump doesn't train them to be Grand Prix ready. Eventually, the local police had gotten a few reports of animal mistreatment from the place and investigated the owner and all of the animals. Clyde was basically covered in scars and only really wanted to bite police officers, so he was definitely a sort of exhibit A for why this place was bad. But in the end, they were able to charge her with multiple accounts of animal cruelty, seize all the animals, and get her in jail. The story of East Point Riding Center spread fast, but thankfully there were many credible barns and owners willing to take in some of the horses. One of which being the one, the only, the Baroness. She gladly took in Clyde and a few other horses, and the SEC was quite an upgrade for all of them. Clyde met a lot of other horses here, and finally learned how to readjust to seeing other horses as his friends. I have a few photos from his time there, and it is just so sweet to see. I love it. Clyde was finally also given a great foundation for training, and after 5 whole years at the SEC, he was a pretty decently trained all-around horse. And unfortunately, it was about time for him to move on to a new home. He was brought to the South Hope Rescue Auction, which of course I was at. I had already bought 3 horses and was definitely done with buying, but I fell in love with him when I saw him. When he first came into the ring, he ended up no-sailing, and I just decided to ignore it. It's whatever. But honestly, this is gonna sound kind of dumb, but something about him just made me think that he didn't deserve to be shipped off from auction to auction, so I went up to the person who had been consigned to come sell him and gave him an offer. This resulted in him coming home with me on that fateful day to Redwood Ranch. The rest of his story is pretty much history. I mean, I've made a ton of videos on him and the other horses I've been training if you want to go back and watch those. But yeah, I've been training him up along with my other rescues for 9 months at this point, which is quite a lot. And although this wasn't my original plan, I've decided that Redwood Ranch is going to be his final home. Thank you all so much for watching, and I hope you all enjoyed learning Clyde's story. I had a ton of fun piecing together everything, even if it was a little sad at times. I really hope you enjoyed the video, and please do consider subscribing. You all have a great day, and I will see you all next time. Goodbye!